The Around the NFL podcast has the vapors.
Welcome back to another edition of the Around the NFL podcast. My name is Dan Hanzus, and I'm joined by a room filled with heroes, Marc Sessler, Chris Wesseling, and Gregg Rosenthal. What's up, boys?
Hey, Dan.
I don't know why I was talking so fast there. Slow it down.
Big show, and you're ready.
Old Zeuser. I'm excited. It's our big Sunday Week 3 recap show.
Lot to discuss right now.
Week 1, I mean, you're getting warmed up. Week 2, we're learning some things. This winds up being the best show of the whole season. Then it starts going downhill next week.
That seems like that's very Cincinnati Bengals like. What a early time to peak. Yes, we have a lot of games to get to because, here at the Around the NFL podcast, we want to make sure we get to you on Sunday night, get all the games taken care of, go through them all, analyze them. Then you could tune in over on the NFL Network on your dial and check out the Around the NFL TV show with our good bud Andrew Siciliano, and he's doing his thing. Basically, Around the NFL is a busy operation.
When's the last time you saw a TV with a dial?
Well, there are
many a grandfather house.
Yeah, septuagenarians, plenty of them.
There was a dial when I was growing up that you had to, we're old enough
Sure,
to
in
be
the
at least
70s.
alive during that era.
We had
It
to
happened.
use
You still do have
fingernail
one.
openers to open the TV. That's how bad our TV was.
What was it like? You have 7 brothers, including yourself, correct? What was it? The TV situation.
There was a good 3-year period in there where the only TV we owned was like a 10-inch black and white that would only turn on with like fingernail or with like tweezers, and then you had to have the aluminum foil, of course, and sometimes you use a hanger for the.
Did you have a roof?
We had a roof.
Oh, that's good.
I can imagine a lot of fistfights breaking out over whether you're going to watch what you're going to watch at 8:30 on a Wednesday.
No, you usually watch what Mom wants to watch.
That's fair. So, a lot to come. I love any peek behind the curtain of the Wesseling family tree. But right now, we're going to focus on the task at hand, and that is breaking down all the Week 3 games. This is what we got coming up on today's show. Recap every game. Greg, 32 teams. I break this down all the time as a reminder. No buys. Games played Thursday and Monday. At least 14 games to talk about today.
You nailed it.
And that means if you're reading our takeaways column, our world-famous takeaways column on the website, 3 per game, 14 times 3. What's that, Dan?
12.
Close.
I once
Not very close.
got a 39 on a state-mandated math test. So we got the Week 3 recap coming up. We also have our good friend, and we love her. She's talented. She's wonderful. She's friendly. She's Colleen Wolfe. Very knowledgeable. Did I mention that?
Connie Fox.
He is knowledgeable.
Connie Fox, the great Connie Fox, will join us. And that is the call. She hears that, and like a feral animal, she turns back from whatever she's doing, starts galloping towards the Culver City studios at NFL Network. I don't know if she'd like that imagery.
I don't know.
But listen,
I do.
I already went down that road. It's too late to back out. And finally, what, Greg?
No, I'm just excited to hear what's next.
Well, you know what's next. We're doing this a long time now. The Sunday Night Football, big matchup at Ford Field. Peyton Manning and the Broncos against Matthew Stafford and the Lions. So we'll break down that big primetime game that you just watched. Al and Chris with the call. A lot of good stuff coming up today. So let's now get into the Week 3 Sunday schedule. And let's start Marc Sessler in Cincinnati, or in Baltimore, I should say, where A.J. Green, I just talked about the wide receivers, but A.J. Green had the game of his career, racking up 227 yards and 2 touchdowns as the undefeated Bengals outlasted the Ravens 28-24. Ravens fall to 0-3. The Bengals now 3-0. Mark, let me ask you this question. Do you believe in the Bengals?
I do. I mean, I feel like, we've taken Andy Dalton to town over and over, and for good reason in the past. And I think he's still going to have a couple of those stinker games. But he just looks completely comfortable in this offense in the second year with Hugh Jackson. I didn't see it to that degree last year. I think they've got so much talent around him that he just feels more confident that he can make plays. And that's what he did today against a bad secondary, frankly, in Baltimore. When it came down to it and they needed him to drive the length of the field, he did it without any issue. And yes, it was A.J. Green, but it was also Baltimore, I think, is a big issue. Another big part of this game is their defense, the defense that we've grown up watching dismantle the rest of that division and take out.
You and
the
Wes
other
are
teams.
fully grown men in Baltimore.
All right, the last decade. If anyone in this
Yeah.
show is 20 years old listening to
Yes.
this, you don't know anything else. This is unusual to watch a team get beaten up the way they have. Last week, Derek Carr, career game. This week, Andy Dalton goes and does the same thing. We don't think of these quarterbacks this way. It has something to do with Baltimore's defense.
Well, this is a game the Ravens needed to win, and they didn't win.
Yeah.
the past couple of Januaries, you've been even more frustrated than I have been by Andy Dalton's play. It sounds like you're saying you believe he could go into January right now and you'd have total confidence that he would win a playoff game.
It's not just him alone. I mean, I think the team has evolved. The team that lost those back-to-back games against the Texans and those boring playoff games, this is a completely different Baltimore, or completely different Bengals team.
To Mark's point, like what we expect from Andy Dalton throughout his career. On Friday's show, you mentioned how you thought that the Ravens would win because Dalton had a stinker in him because he's had those in his career.
Well, I just picked every home team, and I paid the price for that.
But your point made so much sense that on my fantasy team, I benched Andy Dalton with your words echoing in my mind.
See, this is why I jumped out of fantasy with Dan, because everything that he does turns out being.
By the way, our team I lessened your stake in our team. I took you out of the decision-making process.
Glad you did.
We're 3-0. But I put in Colin Kaepernick in for Dalton. That didn't work out well.
Well, that's your decision. Why did you do that?
It was an awful decision in retrospect. But the point being is, like, maybe this is a different Andy Dalton, but it is September.
Don't sit a quarterback against Baltimore secondary. That's what I wouldn't do.
We've seen Andy Dalton have great 3-game stretches.
No doubt.
We want to see it over the long haul. Now, I do think he has looked better, and if you want to make the case, what's different with Andy Dalton now? It's what Wes was talking about in the offseason. It's the best supporting cast maybe in the entire NFL. You have Jeremy Hill not even playing well, and Gio Bernard can go in there and look like a top 10 running back. You have Marvin Jones catching long touchdowns. You have Tyler Eifert wresting away balls, looking very physical, looking like a high-quality tight end. I mean, he has got more talent around him, no matter how well he's playing, than just about any quarterback in the league.
You've also got one of the things that all of the best teams in the NFL have right now, and that's good offensive line play. To me, that's the difference between the good teams and the bad teams through 3 weeks. And the Bengals, look, Andy Dalton could go 14-0 in the regular season. And my opinion of him will not change. He has to win big games. Win under the lights. Win in the playoffs. I don't care what you're doing on some random Sunday in September.
Wes, let's talk stable of boys for a moment. The man that resides in the suite, not for much longer, he'll be moving out at the end of the year. But Steve Smith putting up some historic numbers for a man his age.
Playing like a man possessed. I mean, he's such a great competitor, and the best 2-game stretch by any wide receiver over 35 years old in NFL history. He's up there with Jerry Rice as far as old wide receivers go. One
thing I'll say, though, speaking of being wowed in September, we were talking about him as a MVP candidate last year, this time. Let's see if he can keep it up.
No, old players fade over the course of the season. I fully expect that.
He's one of the few players on that team showing any fire right now, to be honest.
That's true.
Old players.
The offense has been okay, though, right? I mean,
They have, but their passing game, they have no foundational run game right now.
Who's playing well in this offense besides Steve Smith and Crockett Gilmore?
Flacco's been okay.
They don't have any speed.
And you know what's weird, though? They're 0-3, and no 0-3 team has made the playoffs since the Bills in '98. That was the Doug Flutie season. But would anybody here be surprised if they were 6-6 in November?
Right. In the AFC,
and in the mix,
I think they can get back in the race, but it's going to have to start Thursday in Pittsburgh. They get a little lucky there with that matchup.
A little.
But it wouldn't shock me. They're 3 plays away, really, from being in this game. And talking about Andy Dalton, I mean, he won in Baltimore last year with a big play to A.J. Green. I mean, these things have happened before.
I would look at them more as about 25 plays away from being a good team, not just 3 plays away from being undefeated.
They're not 0-3 bad, but the record says you're 0-3 in a division that's really tough, so that's a problem.
What did Bill Parcells say, Wes?
You are what your record says you are.
Right, so you mentioned, Greg, that they get lucky next week, the Ravens do, and that's because Ben Roethlisberger won't be playing. The Steelers quarterback left Sunday's game with a knee injury in the third quarter. The Steelers still survived. Michael Vick came in. They won 12-6 in St. Louis against the Rams. Forget about the Rams. They stink. Greg, has the one they called Big Ben changed his injury? Has it shifted the balance of power in the AFC?
Absolutely. It gives the Bengals a chance to get ahead of the Steelers over how, as we tape this Sunday night, we'll see. The initial estimates are 4 weeks, but we don't really know for sure what that's going to be, but that could be big. Bengals can get a couple game lead. Who knows if the Steelers were going to be in the mix for a bye? That's going to make things tougher on them. But I think it's really important that they won this game today, that you can't overlook the fact they were up 9-3 when he left the game midway through the third quarter. Michael Vick did absolutely nothing. In fact, he fumbled the ball and he nearly threw an interception, and yet they still won the game without Ryan Shazier because of their defense. Now they got a little lucky. The Rams gave them a couple things, but ultimately it's a good sign to me that they won the game with Le'Veon Bell with a big run at the end and the defense playing pretty well.
I mean, is it just Pittsburgh's defense has been better. Like the last game, they're finally getting some pass rush. But you're the St. Louis Rams. You lose 12-6.
They are who we thought they were.
Ridiculous.
Their offensive line is a joke, and they don't move the ball on offense.
The score was strange because the Rams really let the Steelers throw the ball short. I think they were so determined not to have what happened to the 49ers, and it worked. Ben Roethlisberger, when he got hurt, it was about to be a 3rd and 21. They probably would have been punting there. The Rams were going to get to the fourth quarter holding Ben Roethlisberger and this loaded offense to 9 points. So the Rams defense played well. I think they did what they needed to do. If Lance Kendricks doesn't kill 2 drives with drops, including a play that would have been a 45-yard touchdown, I think the Rams are ahead in this game.
It's the same old story with the Rams.
Yes.
There's always something, and it's this offense. And, listen, we all love Detective Frank Signetti. But you know what? Turn in your badge, bro.
Two awful
Turn
games.
it in. Because your team's not moving anywhere. And I know Nick Foles is your quarterback, and Todd Gurley came back and played and made his debut, didn't do anything. Tavon Austin, who we were starting to get excited about, he's pulling that thing again where he disappears for 4 to 6 weeks. It's the same old crap with the Rams.
It is, and Foles really did nothing wrong for the first 3 quarters. It was really his teammates and just a wildly conservative offense, and they only had 3 drives in the first half. But if you're going to have that type of game plan, then you need to have him play well when it matters in the fourth quarter. And when he got the ball back only down 3 with 3 minutes to go, the first thing he does is throw into double coverage and an interception. So when the chips were down the last couple weeks, he played poorly.
And this can tear apart a team if you're the Rams, because what do you think Gregg Williams is telling his defensive players behind the scenes when your offense is putting up 6 points? You held the Steelers to 12 points. You did your job.
He's been known to tell his defensive players a few things behind the scenes.
Jeff Fisher almost said as much after the game when they were talking about how they lost the game, and he basically was like, well, we've only scored 16 points on offense the last 2 weeks. That's the only problem. That's the only problem.
7-9, you're right.
I think if you're the Steelers, you have to go from the nadir of deflation this afternoon to kind of feeling buoyant right now. If the reports are accurate, Ben might miss 4 to 6 weeks. Le'Veon Bell comes back in as a factor. Martavis Bryant is due back. They could win some games, and if they're still in it...
It's insane how good their offense is. Their first play of the game, they line up Le'Veon Bell at wide receiver. It was almost like a sign. Hey, we're going to make him a wide receiver. Throws it to him for 10 yards. He looked good. He looked like Le'Veon Bell, basically.
If Big Ben's out for a month, it's the Ravens at home, the Chargers on the road, the Cardinals at home, and the Chiefs away. It's not easy.
2-2 maybe.
If you go 2-2 there, they've done it with Charlie Batch.
Then you're fine.
I'd be worried about Michael Vick, though. From what we saw last year.
You know what else I'd be worried about?
Yeah.
Your sandwich proposition that the Rams are finishing in second place.
That is
the Cardinals
on life support.
Cardinals racing towards 14-2, and the Seahawks will win at least 11. Yeah, bang!
I think the Rams have a chance still to win 10
to
games.
go 7-9.
This is going to be tough.
They've got a
great that game until they win 7.
They've got a great chance to go 7-9.
What have you seen from them to think they're going to go 10-6 now?
They easily could have won this game.
But Greg, this is
terrible.
Greg's whole thing
They're
is
terrible.
You will sit there until a team is buried. You'll tell us about every way and shape and form that they can
He loves
avoid the
that.
coffin. But they are not a 10-win team right now.
They're 1-2. We will have 7 different times this year with all of these teams. Oh, the Bengals are done now. Like we'll have a play where the Bengals are done.
Tell us they'll win 6 in a row.
We might have to start sticking a fork in some teams. I'm not saying the Rams are that team, but
fork them.
Come on, let's be serious. Let's move on. Let's check out a team in the AFC, a team that was desperate for a win. The Indianapolis Colts got it. They scored 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. Came from behind to knock off the Tennessee Titans in a 37-35 thriller in Nashville, Chris Wesseling. Did this comeback save Chaz Pagano's job?
I don't know. I'm not Jim Irsay.
Let's just say you are.
I think it could save their season. You could look back in January and they're in the playoffs and say that 7-minute span in the fourth quarter where they scored 3 touchdowns saved their season, because just a few minutes before that, if you were watching a game, you're thinking, wow, Andrew Luck has severely regressed in the pocket. As a decision maker and in pocket presence, he had clearly regressed. Andre Johnson saw 1 target officially in this game. He had a 37-yard play called back. And in the offensive line, they made some moves. They put Joe Wrights in at right tackle, moved Jack Mewert back inside the guard. But Luck still didn't seem to trust his line in this game, and they still had plays called back on holding penalties. So I think you could say the Colts might be a little bit back on track, but they still have major issues, tangible issues on offense.
You aren't getting Jack Mewert heat in any other podcast. That's all I've got to say. Mr. and Mrs. Mewert, if you're out there. They appreciate it.
Just for the record, since I am a hardcore journo, it was a 35-33 final. Not
Thank you
37.
for clarifying.
How'd your boy Mariota look, putting a lot of points on the board?
He looked impressive. 2 interceptions. The first one was a pick six that was not his fault in any way. Delaney Walker had the ball knocked out of his hands after he caught it and popped up into Dwight Lowry's hands, 67 yards. But Mariota moved the ball 367 yards, came back with a 2-minute drill to potentially tie the game, but they couldn't get the 2-point conversion down. He looks pretty good. I was impressed with him again. And I think he, Jay Cutler, and Mark Rypien are the only quarterbacks in NFL history to have multiple touchdowns in their first 3 NFL games.
And that's happening with Tennessee not running the ball at all, it looks like, and having a bizarre change of backfield every week.
It's happening with a team that starts Harry Douglas and Antonio Andrews. Antonio Andrews is a running back who moves like a fullback. They benched Bishop Sankey. I don't know why, but they benched him. And this team, like, if Delaney Walker and Kendall Wright aren't making the play, who's making the play?
It's way too early to get into award season talk, but of all the major awards, Marcus Mariota is way out in front of anyone else in his category, which is Offensive Rookie of the Year. The
Amari
guy's
Cooper seems like he's coming on strong.
all right. You can throw him in there, but Mariota
a successful
plays
quarterback is going to get that award every time.
This is what we talked about with the Colts and the soft landing in the AFC South last week, though. Even as we laid out like the 3 games in a row, it's like, okay, maybe they'll struggle a little bit against the Titans in that first one, and then they find a way to get a big win on the road, which is exactly what they did. I mean, that's the type of thing good teams do. And then next week, now you get the Jaguars, or I'm not sure what the order is, the Jaguars and the Texans, and then you get a little better each week, and suddenly you've won 3 games, you're feeling better about yourself, and no one in this, they're already back in first place, no one in this division's above 500.
Yeah, and then you get whacked in January if you keep playing the way the Colts have. They're not a complete team.
A tearful, emotional Chuck Pagano in the locker room, I saw the video on the Colts website, called this the biggest victory he's ever been a part of.
Because he knows, like, I'm not joking around. I think there was a chance that he could have gotten fired tomorrow morning.
He was
this did not turn around.
emotional as any coach I've seen.
He's
He's an emotional
acknowledging
guy.
he's not coming back next year, probably.
But that's maybe that's true, and I think he probably feels that. But they did win a playoff game against Peyton Manning last year to get to the AFC Championship. I would think that game was pretty big.
Well, he was talking more about showing character.
No logic.
Yeah.
He was talking more about beyond football, teaching life lessons.
He's
All right,
pressing hard is what he's doing.
Win some more games. All right, moving on. Let's check out another undefeated team, the Atlanta Falcons, who rode, a virtuoso performance from Julio Jones in a 39-28 comeback win over the depleted Dallas Cowboys. In Gerald World, this is a game where the Falcons scored the final 25 points, and then Julio Jones, as I alluded to at the top of the podcast, just took over, 12 for 164 and 2 touchdowns. They also had a great running game. No Tevin Coleman, but Devonta Freeman went 30 for 141 and 3 touchdowns. It's amazing to me how different the Falcons are this year compared to the Tavas wearing Mike Smith era Falcons, which are just dead in the water. And I know we could talk about team of ATL at some point, and we got to pick a team soon, and we don't like to pick teams that play in domes for some reason. It's unclear to me, but that's something that you guys, Wes and Mark, have laid out in the past.
We can clarify it for you.
But the Falcons are an exciting team. I feel like they pass a lot of the tests, the litmus tests for what we look for, because they are playing really well right now. And the Cowboys put up a good fight, but the Falcons just overwhelmed them.
How disappointing is this Cowboys defense that you get 28 points from Brandon Weeden? And I know it stopped in the second half, but that's found money. They got that good of an offensive performance and jumped out to a huge lead in this game. That's more than you could have expected out of Weeden. Yeah,
and Weeden was fine. He was accurate with his passing. He made one Brandon Weeden-like pass that was intercepted, but he did exactly what they needed from him. And what happened here with this game was strange, because we talk about the vaunted offensive line of the Cowboys, and in the first half, they were dominant. Not only was Weeden getting protection, Joseph Randle was going off. I think he had 90 yards about at the half and finished with 3 rushing touchdowns himself. But then everything disappeared for this team in the second half. They couldn't, I think they had -5 rushing yards in the third quarter, could not move the ball on the ground after that. And then Brandon Weeden, once you're in a position where it's Matt Ryan versus Brandon Weeden, who's going to win, you know what's going to happen there.
I mean, Weeden, 22 for 26. We had a network hit last week where we basically all buried the guy. And I'm not saying he blew the doors off, but you're right, Greg. You love Brandon Weeden, but 22 for 26.
Now he loves him.
I don't think a lot of people predicting that. I think, though, one thing with the Falcons, Kyle Shanahan has made a big difference for this offense, because this team could not run the ball at all the last couple of years. Same characters. Devonta Freeman's in there, rushes for 141 yards. And here's the difference, because Kyle Shanahan did that in Cleveland with bad running backs. You take him out of the mix, Cleveland can't run the ball. It has to do with Shanahan, and he's always done well with his number one receiver. So Julio Jones is having the kind of year you could expect.
Julio Jones has 34 catches, as I said, through 3 games. And, he's on pace for an NFL record. No one's ever had that many catches in 3 games. And he's reached that stage where he's just uncoverable.
Well, I'm glad you made that point about Julio off the top, because it was something I wanted to talk about last week, which was that is Julio Jones, as great as he's been, going to have a season that this is the season we remember him by? And he's off to that start. I mean, every game he's been over 130 yards. Every game he's absolutely dominated the game to the point where you can say he's basically the difference. Because he was in the first 2 games. They won that game because of him in week 1, and they won that game because of him in week 2.
He's one of the few guys that signs a big money contract and actually is outplaying it potentially.
I think on the other side of the ball, too, last week when I watched the Giants game, Vic Beasley, their first-round pick, might be the quickest edge rusher in the NFL already. I mean, he's getting to Tyron Smith, who has the best feet of any left tackle in the NFL, had some problems with Vic Beasley today.
Looked good in week 1, too.
Yep.
So the Falcons are 3-0, as are the Arizona Cardinals, who are on a roll and creating some distance in the NFC South following a 47-7 win over the 49ers. Yikes. That week 1 Monday night win for the 49ers feels like it was about 3 years ago now. Greg, are the Cardinals that good, or are the 49ers that bad?
No, I think you have to give the credit to the Cardinals defense for jumping on some of Colin Kaepernick's passes. 2 pick sixes in the first 6 minutes of that game. That is the first time in NFL history it's ever happened that fast. Well, they say since 1925. Technically, they don't know what happened before 1925.
No idea.
I'm going to go out there and say it, since they didn't throw the ball back in 1925. Right. Probably not 2 pick sixes in the first 6 minutes. So that's why it's a little hard to evaluate this game, because after the 2 pick sixes, they stopped them again, and then the Cardinals go right down the field. They're up 21-0 midway.
I got some evaluation for you.
What?
Give the Cardinals some credit.
Oh,
they're just a much better team.
Of course they are.
Yeah, they are.
Last week, the 49ers, it was a little misleading, I think, the final score. They actually outgained Pittsburgh in that game. In this game, it was one-way traffic even after the start. I mean, they dominated on offense. They could have scored even more points. Carson Palmer and Larry Fitzgerald were talking about missed opportunities after the game, and the 49ers never got anything going offensively.
Can I make a request?
You're raising your hand.
Yeah,
yes.
Structurally for our coverage, how we do things here at NFL.com.
Sure.
Can we just stop writing off-season stories?
Why?
Because how many posts did we write about Colin Kaepernick and working with different coaches and improving his footwork?
Oh, God.
Look at his footwork.
That's why I pass up all those stories.
I mean, it's just, listen, somebody's got to do them. Wes, maybe you're a smarter man than I, but I mean, we write the stories and you put the analysis in, and maybe if he could do this and do that.
Trent Dilfer believes it.
He can get back to being that guy he was a couple years ago. But let's face it, Colin Kaepernick stinks now.
I disagree. I think writing off-season stories, that makes sense. Writing him off Kaepernick for 1 bad game when he played 2, I would say, good games. Last week, I would say it was very good. It was one of the better played games by a quarterback all week. I know they trailed early, had nothing to do with him. He had a lot of impressive passes. I'm just saying...
It's not go crazy about his week 1 game either.
No, he was fine.
Yeah.
I'm just saying... This game started off so poorly. It's almost like, what do you even say after it's 21-0 in the first quarter?
Yeah, it throws everyone off balance, and it's a bad team to be Carlos Hyde on.
They're not lost by 30 points last week, too. Not that that's on Colin Kaepernick, but...
Can I make a request for you?
Yes.
Can the Cardinals be team of ATL?
What?
You were the only one holding them up, weren't you?
Here's my hesitation.
Oh, no.
That they're too good.
Well, we had them last week before they were 3-0.
Yeah, but we knew they were going to kill the Niners, so that to me, it wasn't like we were going to be ahead of the curve.
I don't think there should be anything about too good.
I'm not gonna block it. We could take a vote on it, but I know I just kind of, when I think of like a fun, exciting team, should be a little under the radar, which I wouldn't call the Cardinals. I kind of like what's going on in Atlanta.
I'm with Dan, but I really don't think that the Carolina Panthers 2 years ago were not about specifically
All right, let's
me.
do this.
Last year was not about that either. You guys roll with what you want.
Let's think it over, and on Tuesday we'll make our decision.
Wow. I thought I'd get a vote tonight.
So we got a lot of stuff to get to, and I feel like that is a topic that needs a little bit of, we need some time to really figure it out. We don't want to make a mistake.
All the puff pieces will be out by Tuesday.
Even though they're good, I still think the key is that they're fun to watch and we like them and they have a spirit about them that we've liked
Absolutely.
since Bruce
They have
Arians
the
has been there.
coolest coach in the league, and he never takes his foot off the gas
I would like
pedal.
many teams, but John Brown, Larry Fitzgerald is playing.
Fitzgerald's awesome.
134 yards
Look
today.
great.
He's running over people. This team is so
Honey
good.
Badger feels like he's getting a blitz for a big play every week.
Carson Palmer's a top 5 quarterback. The offensive line's good. This team is so good that they've made Chris Johnson a legit player again. 150 yards from scrimmage today. He's running decisively. Any team that could bring back the old Chris Johnson, they're doing voodoo.
You guys are going to thank me, by the way,
They're doing voodoo.
when Honey Badger, Bruce Arians, and Carson Palmer moved to South Korea on Monday.
Well, you can thank
That would
me
be
for
weird.
not making Colin Kaepernick the team of ATL.
Well, I'm glad. That's why you don't do it too early. You
We're never going to make a decision on this thing.
Can't
Well,
go too
we'll
late.
save it for Tuesday.
Tuesday is the time to make the move.
I agree.
ATL.
Why would they move to South Korea?
Why not?
They have motives. They have reasons.
Seems reasonable to me.
Hopefully that doesn't. Hopefully it falls through. It's just now a matter of a ride. If they
It's
can
in the
get the
works
ride,
already.
it's done. They just need the ride to South Korea. It's a
good
long
game to
car
go
ride,
out
a
on.
truck ride, and a boat.
Sure.
Okay. The Carolina Panthers. Let's talk more undefeated teams. It moved to 3-0 for the first time since 2003 and banished the Saints to 0-3 on the strength of a 300-yard passing day from Cam Newton and a 27-22 win. Nice job by the Panthers. But, Greg, this feels like the Saints have slipped into the pro football abyss. Let's start there.
That's true, and yet they probably feel good about what happened today.
That's never
They
good,
feel
by the
great.
way.
I mean, they don't feel great, but Luke McCown plays fine in the game. Defensively, it happens what you expect to happen. The fact that they were competitive with Luke McCown at quarterback, I'm surprised. I thought it was going to be a blowout, and that's just where the Saints are. We talked about the Ravens. I think you can stick a fork in the Saints. I mean,
Thank you. I thought you were about to tell me that,
No.
it'd be 6-4 and we're running.
I mean, I
You should have actually do it
I
just to get
believe in
Mark fired
something
up,
like
get the
mojo.
eyes.
I mean, the
I
Ravens
get it,
have
but
negative
come on.
mojo. It's kind of like the Falcons. Once you start winning those close games, you start believing it. And right now, the Panthers are a team that are in close games, and they're used to winning at this point, dating back to the end of last season. They know how to win ugly games. It's sort of what they do.
Yeah.
Before we get to further talking about this game, I just want to check in something after the game that happened with Cam Newton and our boy Ed Hockley. This is what Cam had to say about a personal foul call that wasn't.
The response that I got was, Cam, you're not old enough to get that call. So I'm looking at him like, what? Jesus, I didn't think you had to have seniority to get a personal foul or anything like that, but
Cam has a point there.
He puts the cam in camouflage.
I mean,
He wore a
Cam wearing
camo-
a ridiculous suit, 2 sizes too
Camo
small.
suit with a bow tie.
Give me a break.
Well, if I had
Reading Schmo.
Cam Newton, well, yes, he is perhaps.
See Ed Hockley
Cam
wearing that?
Newton, best body in the NFL. What a bod. Makes Kevin Patra's bod like an old sludgy man. However, that suit's too small. Ed Hockley did not throw a flag on a late hit. Was that what this was about?
It wasn't even necessarily a bad call. He thought it was a late hit on a play where Cam Newton was outside the pocket. And Cam Newton even admitted he's not sure, if it was the right call or not, but he was really upset about the explanation. For what it's worth, a league source did tell around the NFL, Ed Hockley
Whoa.
denies having said that. And the league also released the
Speaking of
statement
good
saying
bodies.
that it was basically the correct call that they didn't make. But that's not the point. You
So
can't
Cam
say that.
Newton's making that up?
Right.
I don't buy that.
I believe Cam on this one.
You're a babe in the woods if you think that this hasn't been going on in the NFL and the NBA for decades and decades. The established players get the calls.
Oh, can you even imagine,
Cam
what's
Newton's
his name?
established. What's he got to do?
Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless tomorrow. They'll get 2 hours out of this. I think we all know where this is headed.
I think Cam Newton deserves a little credit. I know it was against the Saints, but 315 yards, 2 touchdowns, big factor in the running game as always. I mean, doesn't have a lot of weapons. Getting
And-
done 3-0.
Their cornerback, Josh Norman, is headed toward a Pro Bowl season instigated by a fight with Marc Sessler.
Ooh, that's right.
Listen, I'm happy
Wow,
for the guy.
what an interception he had today.
Good thing he's not on the Saints defense, which is one of the worst in the NFL right
By
now.
the way, I do that NFL Now, that couch show with Dave Damashek and Ike Taylor and MJD. They just sit there for 8 hours straight. And Ike took exception with you having issues with Mike Shula. Were you aware of this, Greg?
MJD, yes.
Or is it
They
MJD,
keep bringing this up. Yeah, I'm not a big Mike Shula guy.
They also have issues with any criticism of Ryan Mallett because they think he's a great quarterback.
Wait, is Gregg wrong? He's right.
No, I'm just saying it was brought up specifically to me in kind
bringing
of
that up.
apropos of nothing. It came up. This was last Sunday.
One thing about the Panthers, look who their first 4 games, Jacksonville, Houston, New Orleans, and then next week they go to Tampa Bay. You couldn't dream up an easier schedule. The 4 games after that, at Seattle, Philadelphia, Indianapolis, Green Bay. That's going to be a whole different story.
But we talked about this before the show. They're playing their own division, which you got some stink bombs in there, and you're playing the AFC South.
Stink bombs. I like that you're bringing that back. People haven't been referencing the stink bomb.
Well, now you have to with the way the Saints played today. That's stink bomb central.
Do the kids have stink bombs anymore, or is it all
I think now
virtual?
they would be watching someone light off stink bombs.
Feels like an 80s, early 90s trope.
Shoot a virtual stink bomb at you. Click the old send button.
Now they
Kids
just
even
rip
know
on
each
you
other
on
and
social
play
media and make you feel bad.
Yeah, they don't even know each other or play outside together anymore. There aren't moms calling kids into dinner. They're already inside, like on their laptop.
This is post-society.
And it's not kids, it's us.
All right, moving on. The Houston Texans got back into the race in the AFC South. A 19-9 win at home over the lowly Tampa Bay Bucks. Mark, the Texans, they weren't carried by the legend of Ryan Mallett, but rather the unstoppable Alfred Blue. Tell us stories.
Well, there's a lot of myth in what you just said. I asked Greg, and I'm not complaining. I said, I want to watch some bad games today so I can watch some better games on Game Pass.
You requested this.
I requested this,
weird.
and I paid the price because this was an absolute disaster for the eyes. It was bad. Ryan Mallett is not a good quarterback. The Texans know that. You know, it's like John McClain tweeted out about 3 quarters in. They just stink. They had 3 drives.
Well,
in the
John
first
McClain's
half.
been saying that for like 5 straight years.
He's
but,
absolutely accurate.
Yeah.
They had 3 drives in the first half where they started inside the opponent's 40 and got no points out of them. They just can't get it done. And you're playing a Tampa Bay defense that Lovey's cover 2, which is about an ancient dinosaur at this point. They made them look good.
Did my prediction of the first J.J. Watt offensive touchdown come true?
It did not.
Oh.
They could have used him.
Did they try anything with him?
They did not.
About
They could have tried a little bit more with that. They did not. They did not very creative on offense. You know, they need Arian Foster back, but Alfred Blue did. He had 139 yards.
Here's a tweet from J.J. Watt. Simply win, period. Whatever, bro.
He's not going to be tweeting that much.
Alfred Blue's confusing. He has 2 games over 130 yards in his career and averages under 3 yards per carry on the other 17 games in his career.
Well, one came against Tampa Bay today. The other, I believe, came against Cleveland's last-ranked run defense. So he's good against bad teams.
Exactly.
I like Dan calling this the AFC South race that they're back into. It's a real sprint to
Everyone's 1 and 2.
I think I might have lifted that from Mark's copy. So
well,
go to him.
I should have put quotes around that.
I'm just saying, they're not exactly running too fast here.
By the way,
first to 7 wins?
team.
Arian Foster is going to be back in a few weeks. I'm not going to get excited about this Texans team. We don't know what the problem is. But I think it'd be around 500 when Foster gets back in a weak division. Maybe they can hang around.
Sure.
No chance. They have terrible quarterbacks.
Who's the best team in the division?
The Colts?
And the Colts had problems.
I think last year's Texans
They have a
are better
quarterback.
than this year's Texans.
Oh, absolutely.
I agree.
Oh, absolutely.
Ryan Fitzpatrick's way better than Hoyer and Mallett, which is terrible to say. Depressing on many levels.
How about Jameis Winston? What do we see from him?
Well, the box score looks awful. He had 19 incompletions on a relatively ineffective offense. But what I liked about him, there were more than a few times that he took shots downfield and he made good use of Vincent Jackson and Mike Evans. Evans especially. There were a couple plays that got called back by flags where his numbers would have looked much better. He also showed good against the pass rush. He showed some escapability. I thought he got away from pass rushers and aggressively made throws downfield, completing some of them. He looked better than he has in some of the other games. And it's not a lost cause.
He's at 7.5 yards per attempt for the season so far. I mean,
good.
he's not off to a bad
Well, we
start.
thought he was going to do that this year. We thought he was going to push it downfield and throw a lot of picks, and that's probably what's going to happen. One other thing, speaking of off-season narratives that we get sucked into, Doug Martin, I'm looking 14 for 46, 3.3 yards a carry. How does he look to you?
I mean, most of that came on. He had like a 17-yard run. He was bottled up. I mean, the Texans. The one thing they seem to do well is shut down the run. They're not the same way against the pass, but when you've got Watt, Clowney, and you got Vince Wilfork, they took care of him today.
So, I was wrong about J.J. Watt.
Well, yes, it's not that you're wrong all season. You were wrong this week.
This is what I was right about. The New England Patriots dropped a 50-burger, baby. Hit me, TD.
Oh no.
Wait, did we get our theme song?
Young Monday.
Dan's
Great.
wild predictions. Julio Jones is good, and the Patriots will score against the Jaguars.
By the way,
How come we don't get songs when our bold predictions go right?
well, you have to be iconic. What can I tell you? I mean, what do you want from me? Listen, when you make a prediction of a 50 burger, there aren't too many during the season. I got it because the New England Patriots offense stayed hot on Sunday, cruising to a 51-17 win over the Jacksonville Jaguars. Forget about the Jaguars. Wes, the Pats never punted in this game. How did they make it look so easy against the Jag? Who?
Well, it's like, the point Mark was making. This was easy to predict.
Whatever, I'm the only one that did. And Connor Orr, not to bag on Connor, but predicted this would be a one-score game.
So totally to bag on Connor.
Yeah, well, I can go through your bold predictions, too.
Right.
Well, Tom Brady's playing great. Gronk is one of the best football players on the planet. Julian Edelman's great. Deion Lewis remains a great weapon. I don't know what else to tell you. They build a big lead, and then they turn it over to LeGarrette Blount and have him smash people.
It's amazing that Tom Brady now, I believe this was his 9th game over 50 points for his career, which is more than 19 different NFL franchises.
That's an amazing stat.
Woo!
Well, they've had the 2007 offense is one of the most iconic offenses in history. He's on pace for almost 1,200 more yards this year than he had in that year.
You're going to get a little bit more of that talk now. They play the Cowboys next week, I believe. Actually, I think they have a bye and then the Cowboys. So you're going to get them deep into the season with some nice little offensive numbers and people talking about 2007.
I don't see this offense slowing down. Scott Fajita, the old Saints linebacker, Browns linebacker, said it's the most methodical, efficient offense he's seen since he's been playing against them and following them out of the Patriots.
That was the other part of my bold prediction, which is bold whether you guys give me credit or not, that this will be the week now where we start hearing this talk about is this Patriots offense up to snuff with all those other teams. Oh, how great this is.
We'll be lucky to hear that talk. Instead, you're going to hear, well, what about them running up the score? Professional football players.
I don't
Give
know
me a break.
who's saying that. I mean, I think, Dan, that is the part of your prediction that you were dead on about because...
No, it was both I was dead on about.
Well, okay. I guess I'm a little less concerned about the first half of that because they're rolling up 40-something points every week. But, Greg, I mean, you kind of checked out from the Patriots after the Super Bowl win. They've sort of done everything they
A lot
could
of
do.
checking out going on around here.
And you got to realize, I mean, they've got to be looked at as the AFC favorite to go right back to the Super Bowl and do it again. I mean, where are you?
I'm enjoying it.
Of course you are.
I didn't check it.
It's on the throne of England.
Why wouldn't I?
This
enjoy
is
it?
life on the throne of
It's
England.
great. I do remember that the way they start season doesn't necessarily have much of a connection with the way they end season. So it's fun to see. But in 2007, when they entered the playoffs, they weren't playing any better than 6 or 7 Patriots.
They were 18-0 at one point. So.
Right, I know, but by the time they got to December, they were not nearly as good a team. My point is,
That must
you've
have
seen
been really
enough of
hard
these
for you.
seasons.
And they're going to
is that your
struggle in
narrative?
these games.
I don't have a narrative. I don't need to have a narrative.
When they were 18-0, they weren't playing as well. I mean,
They weren't playing great in December and into the playoffs that year. I think
they
anyone
came a
watched
bizarre
it.
play away from going 19-0 and being one of the greatest teams of any sport anywhere.
Absolutely. My point is they've gone into the playoffs in 2010, in 2014, in 2012. Like those were all good teams
I
too.
didn't keep track of all the playoff teams.
I mean, Greg, we feel for you.
Yeah.
I thought the use of Deion Lewis today was interesting, too. Bill Belichick basically conceding that how valuable he is. LeGarrette Blount didn't see a snap in the first quarter. Nobody did except Deion Lewis. While the game was in reach, Lewis was the every down back. And then as soon as it gets to be a blowout, Belichick's like, this guy's too valuable to risk injuring. I'm going to put in Blount and kill the clock.
When Wes sees Deion Lewis on Tinder, swipe right.
He's in the stable.
He's loving this guy.
He's in the stable of boys.
I'm just pointing out how good he's been.
Coffee, Deion Lewis.
A lot of undefeated teams, but the Patriots might be the best, at least in the AFC. Now, this is the part of the show where we say hi to our friend. She's from NFL Now. She has blonde hair. She has 3 syllables in her name, first and last. She is very successful, and we like her. She is Colleen Wolfe. Oh, look at this. This is Colleen just putting up a thumbs up behind the glass like, how is this happening to me? TD, in his mind, wanted to have a scenario. And first, I like it. I love the song. Young Monday. Check out his stuff at Young Monday. I think it's the only song he's ever released, but it's a killer. TD wanted Colleen to be dancing as well, but it just didn't happen. TD, what happened there?
I don't know. Colleen let me down. It's all good, though.
All right, Colleen, can you join us? And maybe we can work past this. There it is. And you know, when you hear the howl, it can only mean one thing. Colleen Wolfe is in the studio. Studio 66. Welcome back to the Around the NFL podcast, Colleen.
It's great to be back, guys.
Good to have you.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, when Colleen comes in, she brings in a ray of sunshine. And let's face it, the blood red moon tonight.
It is. I'm excited about it. Are you?
I'm happy to have someone to talk about the blood moon.
I did not realize,
moon.
Dan, that you were like plugged into lunar cycles.
What does this mean for your life?
I don't know, but it is exciting. It doesn't happen a lot, and Colleen referenced it before she came on, so now I feel energized.
Mm-hmm. Blood moon.
Blood moon stuff.
Get behind it.
Greg, your thoughts?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I know. Let's just go. Let's talk. Let's get right into games, Colleen. You're going to help us out a little bit. We're going to talk some football with you. Feel free to jump in, whatever. You know how it goes now.
Great.
All right, let's start with your native Philadelphia region. We'll start with that team, the Eagles, who are in the win column. Chip Kelly's team took advantage of 4 Jets turnovers and a 24-17 win at the Meadowlands. And listen, if you're a Jets fan, this cannot surprise you. This was the typical Jets performance. You win 2 games in a row. You get the fan base excited. You get a winless team coming into your building, and you lay an egg. That's what they did. 4 turnovers. To the Eagles' credit, they took advantage of the Jets' sloppy play. And there you go. The Eagles 1-2 avoid a killer 0-3 start. Sam Bradford plays okay. Could have been better with some better hands by his running backs, who otherwise played very well. But the Eagles are in the win column. The Jets fall 2-1. Colleen, what are your thoughts?
Man, I did not expect this at all. I thought for sure, just watching the Eagles the last 2 weeks and then seeing how the Jets' defense was, that this was going to be a complete and total embarrassment. But somehow it was not. And Ryan Matthews, he did great. Besides the fumble, and that he almost gave the game away. He's lucky that didn't happen. But he was effective. Sproles looked really good on that punt return. Then you had Ryan Fitzpatrick, who threw for 58 times. He just keeps throwing the ball. Plus, Brandon Marshall, the lateral to no one.
Yeah, Brandon Marshall, this is why you never trust the box score, because Brandon Marshall had over 100 yards again, had a touchdown for the 3rd straight game, and yes, he gives the Jets a legitimate number 1, but he contributed big time to the loss. He had, as you'll see on blooper reels, his Jets initiation moment at 17-0, attempts a lateral after a long reception that gets recovered by the Eagles, and they go in and score to put the game away at the end of the 2nd quarter. And then at the end of the game, with the Jets trailing by 2 scores, Marshall lets a pass go right through his fingers that results in a Ryan Fitzpatrick interception that basically seals the game late in the 4th quarter. And here's the problem, Greg, and I think all of us have talked about Ryan Fitzpatrick and a man that has limitations as a passer. They can't fall behind like this because he simply doesn't have the skills to bring a team back with his arm. He cannot go downfield. Granted, there was no Eric Decker, which hurt. Chris Ivory didn't play. He was too beat up, and they couldn't run the ball, which didn't help matters. But when he has to go downfield and he has to put it in tight spaces, he simply can't, and that's poison for a team that falls behind a couple scores.
Well, they didn't win they didn't get 5 turnovers in a game for the first time. I mean, you can't win that way each week. Instead, this time they were on the other side of it. They really haven't had a game all season where if you look at the yardage where there was much difference between them and the other team. I mean, the Eagles won because they had turnovers. Sam Bradford had 4.2 yards per attempt. I don't know if anyone watching this game, do you feel better about Sam Bradford at all?
Deep in the Gabbert zone.
A little bit, because
that's terrible, 4.2 yards per
Darren
attempt.
Sproles dropped a perfectly placed pass that would have been an 80-yard touchdown, and then his stats look totally different. But and Bradford also, he had moments where he didn't look good at all. But this was an improvement from week 2 to week 3, which, granted, isn't saying a lot. But you're not going to hear anything about Marc Sanchez this week.
Plus, the offensive line looked better, too.
They had 108 yards passing. That's not NFL level. So I think in Philadelphia, that's going to give them a talking point this week.
But they did run the ball finally. That's the difference.
Here's the thing. The Eagles have the defending offensive player of the year on their team. Didn't play with a hamstring injury today, and they were better without him. This team with Darren Sproles and Ryan Matthews, that's a fine 1-2 punch, and that's really all they need. I'm not even sure. I can imagine them being like, DeMarco, take it easy. Make sure you get all the way back, because they're not hurting for DeMarco Murray.
It's only 3 games, but the game film shows that DeMarco Murray is a $40 million boondoggle. I mean, you're giving this guy the ball. They're terrible in the 2 games he played, and he looks like the slowest running back in the league. And then in the 1 game he doesn't play, Ryan Matthews looks like he's a great fit for the offense against a good front 7.
That's the name of the NFL Films end of the year yearbook. You know that they do the $40 million boondoggle. I don't know why it's all about DeMarco Murray.
I find it funny that like Jets players were saying that they were part of a crowd that were saying that the Eagles, the way they run, it's relatively simple and that teams have caught up and you know when they line up a certain way what they're going to do. But then they are the ones that went up and gave up 123 yards, what I thought was the best run defense in the league.
The Jets, actually, if you look game to game for the Jets, defensively against the run, they haven't been great. Even on Monday night against the Colts, they were having issues with Frank Gore, but Pep Hamilton didn't do a good job with his game plan at all, I thought. So I think that's something to keep an eye on with them. I mean, listen, this is a team that's not going to blow anybody out, and if they fall behind, they're done.
I like that it didn't take long to ask whether Ryan Fitzpatrick is still their quarterback, and he is. Todd Bowles said yes, but
for now,
Gino, come on.
Their formula is the same as the Bills. You have to get up early, run the ball, and your quarterback should only throw it 25 or 30 times a game.
Chip Kelly's got to be really relieved, too, because the city would have just imploded
Oh,
if they started 0-3.
Yeah.
That's very true. All right, let's move on. This is not a drill. The Oakland Raiders have a winning record in late September. Led by another strong performance from Derek Carr, the Raiders jumped out to a big lead, held on late, a 27-20 win over the Cleveland Browns. Colleen, the Raiders, they're not a total embarrassment.
They're 2-1, and they're playing the Bears next week, so they could theoretically be 3-1, which is insane. Derek Carr, he looked pretty good. He had some nice throws, and he wasn't sacked at all, which the Browns the week before had sacked Mariota 7 times, I think. So that was an improvement. Latavius Murray, he had his best game yet, yardage-wise, 134 yards. And then you have the Oakland defense that sacked McCown 5 times.
All I heard about all afternoon was Amari Cooper. He must have looked phenomenal.
Yeah, he was great too. I think he had he had this catch. It was a 40-yard catch, one-on-one against Joe Hayden. It was beautiful. He beat him straight up. He did not have a touchdown, but he did have 134 receiving yards. He had a big day.
I might be eating some crow on Derek Carr in terms of how he's playing so far this year. Obviously coming off a good game, this was another one. But part of it is, he has guys, people making plays for him. Cooper making plays for him. Michael Crabtree could turn out to be one of the better free agent bargains of the year. He didn't do a lot today, but he's a factor. And I really would be in crow about Bill Musgrave, because that was the part of the whole equation I didn't really get. Bill Musgrave and changing the offense. When you change coaches, he has almost no history of success as an offensive coordinator, but they're dialing up some big plays. Last year, it's all dink and dunk, and this year, they're getting some big plays.
Mark, as a vegetarian, what is the equivalent of eating crow? Number 1.
I mean, it would be like a bird made out of tomatoes and weeds.
Weird. And number two, are you missing the Cleveland Browns so far?
Well, I've watched every one of their games, and my problem with the Browns, and we talked about Kyle Shanahan and what he's good at and what his absence means for this team. Last year, you had the maybe third, third best, fourth line in the game. You pounded people with your line. You ran the ball well with Isaiah Crowell, and you beat teams up. And last week, they went out and they also played well on defense with sacks, and they were able to stop the run. Everything you say that you're going to be in this offseason, we don't have a quarterback, but we're going to be tough on both lines, play like a Brown, blah, blah, blah. Well, what I see is Joe Hayden can't cover Brandon Marshall, and he can't cover Amari Cooper.
All
right. Is he the most overrated cornerback in the NFL?
For the way he is hoisted up, and when you put him in, if it's not A.J. Green, he has a problem with a lot of receivers. They cannot run the ball. They run the ball for 39 yards today. You get no sacks. You're at home against the Raiders, and you blow the game.
Not to mention, they were driving down the field to try and tie the game, and Josh McCown throws a pick. Charles Woodson, who's going to be 39 next week.
He's had an interception in 18 straight seasons, tying Darryl Green. What's so funny? That was a good stat.
No, it was great. Awesome.
I mean,
don't be defensive about your stat.
What was wrong with that stat?
It was amazing.
All right, I'm getting out of here.
You have pivoted on that stat.
They're a human delivery. We were just,
that's
riding your wave.
Can you play his theme song again? Please? We need to
the
end of the show.
This will give me my energy back. But I had a really nice follow-up point about this game, but then when you guys all chuckled at my Charles Woodson thing.
Fandom.
It wasn't actually, but since you brought it up, I will say that, as the last fan standing at the Around the NFL podcast, I'm supportive of the Jets, and a loss like this stinks. The Eagles, that was a terrible loss at home. And this is where the frustration comes for me a little bit, Mark, is that you get to skate by and not have to deal with this loss.
I have to
The
say
Raiders,
this.
It's a weird way to look
I
at
have
things.
to say this every podcast. It's not about you, Dan.
Yeah.
And I still do feel it's frustrating.
Yeah,
it bothers me. I don't like seeing them crumble this way. This was a chance for us to talk about them as the 2-1 team, but they can't get it done. They're not the team that can get it done.
We talked about our theory before the podcast. I mean, I think the anger or the frustration with the Browns, it's now just coming out in other areas. So, like, you're getting more angry about the Ravens.
There's a lot of hot takes. Very few of them are accurate.
My theory is that, the anger has to go somewhere, and it's gone in the direction of the Ravens, who you root heartily against every Sunday, more than ever
That's not
before.
changed,
And then Peyton Manning, who's an old man. He's
I can
basically
care
it's
less about
senior
Peyton
citizen
Manning.
abuse, the way you go after Peyton Manning
It's
now.
not like it's a new thing
like,
that I don't like the
Peyton
Ravens.
Manning
That's
is in a
like
bit of
20 years
decline,
old.
but you seem to really revel in it. That's all.
If you can just keep creating narratives that aren't even accurate, go for it.
Mark and I feel the same way. He's no longer a fun quarterback to watch.
That's
Well,
And
why
it's
don't you go get a log
and why does
cabin
it have
together?
to be? Why does it have to be heresy to say that?
No, of course he's not. I mean, I find it fun just because it's different. It's like, I've seen exactly what Peyton Manning
I feel
is for a while.
sad
This is fun.
a little bit.
But we're getting ahead of ourselves. It is insane. We should just give the Raiders a lot of credit. That 469 yards of offense after the performance they had last week, and thinking this was what the Browns were supposed to be halfway decent at, a home defense. To put up that many yards is crazy. It's humbling.
I remembered what I was going to say now. You mentioned play like a Brown. And this isn't really a shot at Mike Pettin or anything, but can we just put to bed all these teams, these disciples from other coaching trees, then going somewhere and be like, play like a Raven, play like a Jet, play like a Bill, play like a Brown. That stuff is predicated on some type of rich history. The Browns have the least amount of history of any team in the league from 99 on. There's no play like a Brown right now.
It should be don't play like a Brown.
Yeah, it should be literally
Up to now,
the
that's
opposite.
exactly right. Stop playing like every Brown before you. Start playing like someone
Play like
else.
a Brown means literally suck.
Right. Play like a Jet is also
Not literally.
I mean,
Not literally.
Plus, it's like, hey, Mike, we watched Hard Knocks. That was Rex's thing. We know that's all over the Jets
And Rex
building.
took
Like,
it
just
from
come
the
up with a
Ravens.
different forward slogan.
Coaches do this. We know that.
went
Yeah.
for it on 4th and goal today, guys.
He did.
Well, that's
Yeah.
good.
It's more you can say for John Fox.
Progress. Let's move on to the Seattle Seahawks, a team that desperately needed a win, and they got it. Because, listen, when you get to play the Bears in 2015, it's as close to a gimme as you can get. A 26-0 win at Wes.
Clink?
No.
Well,
Yes. Yeah,
that's what the locals call it. Come
Century
on,
Link
Dan.
Field. Yep,
Alex
the Clink.
Trebek would give that to him.
That's correct. Mark, nobody gave the Dakota Clawson Bears a chance in Seattle, and everybody was right. Dakota Clawson, is that the quarterback?
I thought it was Matt.
Oh, Matt.
Yeah, the last name is Clausen.
Jimmy. James?
It's a zero factor. Threw for 63 yards in the game, 10 possessions, 10 punts. This game was over. I mean, it was over before it began.
At 3-0 it was over.
There was not a moment where the Bears threatened on any level, and it was very frustrating to watch because, number one, you got nothing to lose if you're the Chicago Bears. John Fox could not have rolled out, and Adam Gase, a more conservative game plan than what it said. Once we're down 10-0, we're just going to sit on the ball. We're not going to win this game. We know it. And that's how they prepared on offense and looked the entire way. Not one thing happened on offense that suggested we are going to try to change this, do something we didn't expect, get aggressive. They did literally zilch.
It's an unpardonable sin.
Absolutely.
You're just going to punt a game in the NFL. Not even try to win.
When we saw John Fox punt down 25 points or whatever it was, past midfield.
Get him out of here. Take his coaching job away. Get him out of here.
That was in the Super Bowl. We know he's going to do it in Week 4. I mean, he's just counting them
This
paychecks.
is brilliant, though, also.
They punted on 10 straight possessions.
Yes.
10 straight
They punted what?
Yeah.
At midfield on 4th and 1, down 20 points.
Give me a break with that.
Totally outclassed. A bad job by John Fox, but also the best thing he can do. Bottom out. Go 2-14. Go 1-15. Ship Jay Cutler out of town. Get the top quarterback in the draft in your building and see if you can make a start of it new, something fresh. They need to reboot the machine. So do not win 6 games this year. Go in the tank.
They are on the list to get that quarterback.
This wasn't even his worst coaching job against the Seahawks.
Wes's boy, by the way, Thomas Rawls,
That's my boy.
leading the way when
Lou Rawls.
Thomas get knocked out.
You'll never
good.
find.
We should, first of all, that was an allusion to Super Bowl 48, which with John Fox's nadir as a coach, that was not pretty. TD in my ear telling me he wants me to point out a Sierra tweet Oh,
give me a break.
Yes,
Why?
The girlfriend
cares?
of Russell Wilson. She's a pop star. Go, Mr. Number 3. Go at Seahawks. Hashtag Go Hawks.
More-
TD,
We need more.
More Thomas Rawls, less Sierra.
TD, why are you so fascinated by that relationship?
I'm not fascinated by it, guys. I'm sorry that I'm trying to be you guys closest to the world today. I'm sorry. Talk about football all you want. Just talk about football.
The only thing you're attached to culturally is soccer and Sierra's fake relationship with Russell Wilson,
That's
who's a
not
human
true.
robot.
I have issues with that relationship. A lot of issues, but I'm just keeping.
What's going on with your relationship? Are you back with that girl?
Whoa. Were we getting personal now?
Yeah.
That's a personal question?
I know. Well, if we're going to talk about relationships.
If you're gonna throw in Sierra tweets, you got to get ready for it.
TD had a girlfriend that was lived like an hour away, and I think broke it off. And then I heard some rumors that they were back together. Where are you at?
All right, guys, let's move on. Let's talk some Russell Wilson here.
That's what you get for bringing up
What about your
Sierra.
plumbing
All right,
issues?
this
Your
John
plumbing
Fox,
okay?
Fox coach team. There's some sentiment out here that they've had some tough breaks and they've played guys close. 0-3 with a minus 49 point differential, the most in the NFL. So they're the worst team. Stop with this. They're not that bad stuff.
Did you guys see the Bears fan that just took his jersey off and left the game? Had a Seahawks fan
Wow, I
take a
love
picture
it.
of it?
No.
These afternoon games were so awful. At one point, the winners were outscoring their opponents 105-14.
Grim.
It was rough.
I wonder, the one takeaway now I have just kind of looking at this game is Marshawn Lynch not being ready for the game, which always happens, which is bizarre, and not being able to finish the game. And if you look at what he's done the first couple of weeks, like he has not looked quite like Marshawn Lynch. I know the offensive line's a problem too, but long term, they got to.
We thought that last September too, right?
Yeah.
And then he played great.
He spent half of September on an exercise bike last year.
Yeah.
He was not healthy.
Had
He
14 touchdowns.
wasn't checked in.
Yeah.
Worst point,
Game, I mean, he didn't play the second half, but worst rushing total since 2011.
Not to impugn on the professionalism or integrity of Jay Cutler, but can't you totally see him like being like, hamstring's still bothering me, coach. I'll take another month off.
Well, if the coach is punting games, why does he care if the quarterback's going to punt a game?
That's true. All right, let's move on. The Minnesota Vikings harassed Phillip Rivers into 2 turnovers and a 31-14 home win over the Chargers. Colleen, Adrian Peterson, AP,
Wow.
AD all day. I don't know what you call him,
Let's
but
just go with AP.
delivered a vintage performance, didn't he?
He did, and he actually didn't really get going until later in the game. But it was sort of the same thing with Teddy Bridgewater too. They both kind of had these like sluggish starts, and then it was like they clicked at the same time. I feel like they need each other, and definitely Teddy Bridgewater needs AP. But I mean, he had this 43-yard touchdown, and he just ran straight over Eric Weddle. I mean, and I feel like I'm sensing a trend.
Does he still have the
with
top
Eric
shot?
Weddle or with Peterson?
Weddle?
Yeah, I think he might be protecting himself a little. He wants a
Ooh.
contract.
Making
Business decisions?
Make a business decision.
Wow.
That's a couple times this season that's happened.
Does Adrian Peterson still have the top shelf speed that he once had? Or is he doing it more combination of talent and a little bit of guile?
He looks
like that.
like the exact same to me, except that long pass he had last week. He didn't have like that fifth
Yeah.
gear, but his explosiveness between like the 10-yard short shuttle burst, he's got that definitely.
His big plays have been to the outside. He had a couple where he gets that Adrian Peterson gallop going. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
just starts going around the corner. I mean, that's where his big plays have been so far.
Are we a little disappointed, Colleen, by what we've seen from Teddy Bridgewater this year?
I mean, I had a little bit higher of expectations for him so far.
I think a lot of us did.
But I think when AP is in there and doing well, he does. So as long as they're not calling passes right out of the gate, then they sort of need to adjust to that and see that and not force it with Teddy, because you can tell that he needs to be a game manager and lean on the run.
I'm surprised by that, though, because I thought late last year he had games where there was no Adrian Peterson and there wasn't always a run game, and he played better than Derek Carr, played better than a lot of the young quarterbacks. And it's not a regression, but it seems like the offense has obviously changed completely.
Well, it's 2 out of 3 games he's struggled. Last week he was just about perfect, but he had an interception early in this game. He should have had a couple. He was playing poorly, and it didn't matter. I'm more disappointed the Chargers didn't take advantage of the slow start by Minnesota, and they ended up getting blasted. This offense, I know we talk a lot about bad offensive lines, but I think the Chargers' offensive line is at a point where they're just like not operable as an offense, and it's like holding the whole team back.
Yeah, and I think with Teddy, too, Jason Verrett, he left with an injury, and then Brandon Flowers, he was already not playing, so that also helped him, too, later in the game.
All right, and let's move to what did we learn from Thursday on the podcast? Is it Miami? Where's the Dolphin Stadium?
It's
like Palm Gardens.
Miami Gardens.
Yeah.
Fort Lauderdale.
yeah.
Something like that. The Buffalo Bills went down to Miami, got their doors blown off. Excuse me. Really struggling here with this game. The Buffalo Bills went down to Miami and blew the doors off the listless Dolphins, jumping out to a 27-0 lead and coasting to a 41-14 win. Wes, the Dolphins have all the makings of a preseason darling turned regular season dud.
Well, and this is another one that Dan Hanzus called. I mean,
saucy.
just to tell the truth here, Dan never had any faith in Joe Philbin. And if you listen to Handsome Hank, Henry Hodgson, our DOP, downstairs, he had a couple of tweets during the game that was just basically no leadership. They're getting nothing from their head coach. The offense isn't doing anything. And Ndamukong Suh is paid a lot of money, but he's not showing any leadership. This team is listless. Their offensive line is a huge disaster, which... When's the last time we talked about the Dolphins and that wasn't the case? It seems like every year the offensive line is holding them back. There's no sustaining element to this offense whatsoever because they can't establish a ground game, and Ryan Tannehill still can't pass beyond 20 yards.
Especially with Brandon Albert down, too.
Right.
That was a huge loss, and I don't think it gets a lot lower than getting drubbed by 27 points at home and watching Richie Incognito laughing it up after the game on the field, talking to old friends and some old coaches, and I just saw that shot, and I thought, if I'm a Dolphins fan watching that, I'm not watching any more Dolphins.
Who was named captain today by Rex, of course.
I love
Naturally.
Oh,
Very rarely is there a decision made in football that you're 100% sure, and collectively everyone agrees, is a terrible decision. And what happened, I think it was week 17 last year, when Stephen Ross announced that Joe Philbin was coming back. I think everybody was like, wait, what? Because 3 years without the playoffs, they brought him back, spent all this money, but it's the same systemic problems because Joe Philbin is not a leader at this level as a head coach, and it's clearly coming out. This team is... We talked about in the preseason that this could be a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense, and they're not close in either realm.
What's confusing is that they have the talent. They've got guys like Rashard Matthews, who has been buried on their bench for 2 years because Joe Philbin doesn't like him. And he's got back-to-back 113-yard games. Today he had 2 touchdowns. They've got Jarvis Landry, who's good. Jordan Cameron's a very good tight end. They've got great pieces, and they can't put it all together.
Well, this is the point last season. Joe Philbin threatened essentially to bench Ryan Tannehill right before they went to London. They're going to London this week. He should pull that move again. Just threaten to bench him.
He should yank himself.
Doesn't some of this fall on, and I hate to say this, but Bill Lazor? I mean, it was 4 weeks ago that we were saying, why aren't 25 teams running the Eagles offense because we're so enamored with it? And maybe we have our answer. This is Miami's version of it, and it's not working at all.
Right. I would put that at the feet of the offensive line. They just can't get anything going.
It's crazy. I mean, it's crazy they're giving up the. We should give some credit to the Bills here. I mean, that's a big bounce-back performance. Tyrod Taylor, big game. And it's crazy that Carlos Williams has 110 yards on 12 carries in this game, while the guy making $11 million and is not healthy had 16 yards on 11 carries. That only happens in football. There's no NBA scenario where, like, the guy making $20 million a year doesn't do anything, and the guy
But he is
nothing.
not healthy. Rex is playing a one.
That's fine. He's out on the field, and he looked pretty good last week.
By the way, more evidence of my narrative, as you say it, Mark, that your anger for the Browns is going elsewhere. You're really down on Rex Ryan. You don't like him at all. Personally, had it hurt to see Rex out coaching Bill Lazor, who's your boy.
I thought Ryan. This is the kind of game where if he wants to show the Bills fans like we are plugged in and we aren't just the team from last week, this is a perfect game. He did a great job of coaching this on the away turf, and like this is a big bounce back game for Rex Ryan. Not going to rip the guy to shred for that. Another narrative, just Jan, you keep floating me your Skip Bayless narrative.
I didn't think that
you know
was.
what? It's week 3. We can reassess each week. Rex Ryan did a good job.
That didn't sound genuine. Those comments. I think the rage boils within.
Listen. Tyrod Taylor, we are going to get out of here without talking about what he did. 21 for 29. I mean, who watched this thing closely? Did a good job.
I watched it closely. He did a very good job.
First quarterback. Half the show is trying to defend against this attack from Dan all show long.
What I nonsense. He's got the fire in his eyes.
Nonsense.
Tyrod Taylor, first Bills quarterback since 1991. Jim Kelly to start a season with 7 touchdowns and a 70% completion rate. He played very well today. had a rough spot in the third quarter, but played really well for the most part.
I like this AFC East out of division schedule. That's why I had the Bills in the playoffs before the season, and I think they're going to be the team. I know the Jets have looked okay so far, but I think the whole AFC East has an opportunity because the out of division schedule is nice, especially for the non-Patriots teams to ride, 10 or 11 wins even if they don't win the division.
Well, Greg knows that the Patriots are going to keep dropping bombs on each one of these teams. So
None of it matters.
To worry about.
These other AFC teams could end up winning 11 games and feel good about themselves, and they'll still finish 4 games behind the Patriots.
The Bills have the longest playoff drought in professional sports. Is that right? Or just in the NFL?
At least the NFL.
Either way, it's a long time. So they'd be happy with the playoffs.
Colleen, we have to say goodbye to you now.
All right.
We love having you on the show.
Been real.
Here's a plan. Come back again next week.
All right.
It's not
Great.
easy.
That was
You're gonna
fantastic.
By the way, you can check out Colleen on NFL Now. She's doing some great
all
work
sorts
over
of
there.
stuff.
So the Wolf will now scurry off to that end of the world, and she'll be back again next week. Thank you, Colleen.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Out goes Colleen, and now we talk about the final game of Sunday Night Football, a matchup between the Broncos and the Lions, and a game which you'd think the Lions need in their building, that maybe they'll show up, get the job done. Doesn't work out that way because Peyton Manning throws for 324 yards and 2 touchdowns, and the Broncos continue their stifling defense en route to a 24-12 victory over the now 0-3 Lions. And, what we saw again today, Greg, was Gary Kubiak saying, okay, I know it doesn't work with 39-year-old Peyton Manning. Let's let Peyton do some Peyton things. And again, he's not 2013 Manning, but he's doing enough, and the defense is doing the rest.
Little pistol formation back in our lives, which is good. Plus 324 yards. I mean, a much better statistical game. And when I think of this game, I think these two teams have been as consistent as any two teams in the entire league so far this year. Basically, every Broncos game has been the same. The defense dominates, and the offense, which is slowly getting better, does enough to win. And every Lions game is the same, which is the offensive line plays terrible, and their defense isn't good enough anymore to make up for it, and they can't run the ball. And now they're 0-3.
Yeah,
Same team every week.
Yeah, the Lions are disappointing. We couldn't have known that they would be without DeAndre Levy, and we didn't know the offensive line was this problematic. But their inability to consistently move the ball is, Matthew Stafford, when's he going to show us that he's better than Andy Dalton?
Well, DeAndre Levy is part of it, but the offense has a lot of parts and it's not working. It's ridiculous.
This is a terrible job by the Lions without Levy, of course. But you need to man up in your building on Sunday night, staring down 0-3, and deliver a performance. And that's why I picked the Lions. I don't even like this Lions team. I hate the way they looked in the first 2 weeks, but I thought, if anything, they'll show a little spine and get a win to stay alive this season. And now they fall to 0-3. And here's the scary thing now, if you're going back to the Broncos. Their defense, I don't think anybody doubts this is a real deal defense, the best Broncos defense maybe ever, potentially here. And if Peyton Manning is figuring it out, and he's not going to throw 50 touchdowns, but if he's figuring it out and this offense becomes proficient, they couldn't run the ball at all today, but if they could just figure it out enough and be a top 15 offense and a top 3 defense, this team is really good.
Big props, though, to Kubiak, because there was, comments that were shaded in the way of, I'm not going to change what I know and what works for me. But then that changed more as the game drew closer. I give him, flexibility as a coach in today's NFL is so important for guys that came from other schemes. The league is changing. You've got to put Manning in a place to succeed. If they didn't do that, Denver would have melted. This city would have gone crazy.
You think Chip Kelly would be abandoning his offensive scheme after 2 weeks?
I don't know.
The Denver defense is special when David Bruton is making big plays week after week. The interception that he made in the fourth quarter was an incredible play and was at the point in the game where the outcome was certainly in doubt. He's made big plays each week. Guys like Brandon Marshall's making big plays each week. And then the stars are playing like stars. DeMarcus Ware, to this point, I would say has been the best outside pass rusher in the NFL. He's not, like we talked about Steve Smith earlier, the receiver.
Houston.
I don't know. So far this year, in terms of each game, and Houston's got to play his third game, Ware has been on fire 3 straight games.
Talking about Peyton Manning figuring things out, I think one thing I noticed in this game that he did figure out, he had been missing downfield trying to hit Emmanuel Sanders and Demaryius Thomas in stride. This game, he put it up in the air and let them high point the ball and make contested catches. So he's not really trying to hit him in stride. He's trying to allow them a chance to make plays on the ball, and they both came through with huge plays.
He made his first completion of 20-plus yards tonight. And one thing, Denver's defense did all that and more, but Matthew Stafford was like 1 for 8 against the pass rush. Matthew Stafford has to learn to settle down and make plays.
Well, it's a level learn. If he hasn't learned yet.
And that's the problem. That's why it's hard to look at the Lions. I don't care what pretty things are surrounding Matthew Stafford. It's just hard to buy into them as a long-term project.
And with Peyton Manning, one play is at the end of the game, when the game was hanging in the balance, 17-12, third down. If the Lions can just force a field goal, it's a one-possession game with the Lions having the ball. And Collinsworth did a great job diagramming, but he saw the way the defense was going to attack. He set up the offensive line one way. He rolled out the other way and dropped a perfect pass to put the game away. And it was just an example of Peyton Manning being so much smarter than everyone else on the field and how much that can cover up his physical limitations.
Well, I think the line of the night and really the summary of the Lions season came from your boy, Al Michaels, that he said there weren't enough fans in the crowd to even have a cascade of boos. It was more like a light rain of boos. I mean, that's where the Lions are at. They're not even hanging out to the end of the game, but the ones that are there are miserable.
Bringing Cascade back into our lives is something more than a dishwashing detergent.
And by the way, everything changes, but nothing changes. Peyton Manning and the Broncos 3-0. Tom Brady and the Patriots 3-0. Crash course, baby! That's it. For another edition of the Around the NFL podcast, our Week 3 recap edition. We will be back on Tuesday. We'll talk about the Monday night game between the Chiefs and Packers. Is that correct?
You nailed it.
Home run. So we'll recap that, and then we'll start, again, Mark, it's the cycle.
Only like 18, 19, 20 more weeks of this.
Exactly.
And then it's the combine, and then it's the owner.
Don't sound so miserable about it.
No, I enjoy
Mark
it.
has to be back at work in about 14 minutes. So
I'm not rolling in at 11 a.m. tomorrow. So let's have a nice time. Everyone get a good night's sleep.
That's it. This is Dan Hanzus. Oh, before we go, behind the glass, we just got to say this is our last video show with the Irishman, Brendan McGinnis. There he is. He's behind the glass. He's Irish, and he's proficient at his job and a gentleman.
And funny.
Absolutely.
Funny,
did a great job.
sneaky funny.
The funniest producer we've ever had on the mic.
There he is.
Gold Standard's pretty funny, too.
But
I'm just saying in terms of just dry humor.
Notice how TD won't even give Brandon the headphones, by the way. To say one thing, Brandon, as he puts them on now, Brandon, you are going to be producing on Tuesday, right?
And Thursday.
And Thursdays. Oh, so we got 2 more shows.
Nice long goodbye.
Excellent. And, just so you know, get ready. We might have something special for you coming up for your last show.
All right, fair enough.
And that's it. There he goes, the Irishman. Another good one going away, but hopefully he comes back. That's it for Sunday's edition of the Around the NFL podcast. We'll be back Tuesday, as I said, so make sure you tune in and check us out on YouTube. This is Dan Hanzus signing off for the Quiet Storm, the Mailman, the Boss, and everybody on the glass. Till then.